Hey guys, what's up? It is week 375. Have a handful of reviews and a couple items for an update. But let's start this one off with Confessions of a Serial Killer, the new Blu-ray from Unearthed Films. This is under the Unearthed Classics line, number 16. They had a pretty good year so far. The last two ones I reviewed were Guyver on 4K and Homework, which is a crazy 80s sex comedy. Not too crazy, but 80s sex comedies are all kind of wacko. But yeah, this one is Confessions of a Serial Killer, like I said, 85. This made my top 25 of 85. When I did that, I'll redo it, of course, when we get there. But it's a really interesting film, and the more I see it, the more I like it. I'm looking back to see if my VHS is sitting there. Yeah, it's right up here. I might as well show it. You guys get a shot of my crotch there. But yeah. So here we go, is a New Horizons VHS released of this. And this is interesting because how long was this runtime? This is odd because this movie's had a strange history. 120 minutes, which, if that's accurate, that's insane. Because I remember watching that supposedly uncut VHS. And you guys can tell they did, this movie was made in 85, so you're wondering, why does it have the Hannibal Lecter kind of cover art? Well, it obviously wasn't distributed on VHS or anywhere until after Silence of the Lambs in the early 90s. In the opening of this film, I don't know if this is an added in director's cut part, where it says something about 87. Now, obviously, they could have predicted a little bit in the future, though. But, obviously, this movie was, I keep saying obviously. Obviously, is it really? Because you're telling us, why would you say it if it's obvious? But it was shot in 85. I don't know if it had any sort of actual release in 85. So that's where, like, contention when this fucking thing was actually released comes out. I don't know. The history and the commentary doesn't really get into it. Because this is based on Henry Lee Lucas, the infamous serial killer, Drifter, the deadly Drifter, along with Otis Toole. They drove cross-country and supposedly killed, 200, 300 people. There's also a more famous or infamous movie made a year later by John McNaughton that didn't get wide distribution until 1990 called Henry. Starring Michael Rooker and Tom Tolles and Tracy Arnold. Really great film. Very, very memorable film. Very excellently well-acted film. It's one of my personal favorites. But saying that, Confessions of a Serial Killer is a really strong film as well. And that it had been butchered for years. This is finally an hour and 46-minute version. Now, if you have the UK DVD, that's cut. This one's uncut in HD. It stars Robert Burns, who was, into the Texas, indie filmmaking scene in probably the 70s, maybe even before. He was a theater actor, but he was a production designer. And people will know his name for being the production design on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Mongrel, which came out in 82, which I just covered, The Hills Have Eyes, a slew of others. Robert Burns is kind of an underrated kind of hero amongst Texas kind of horror films. And now when you look at Henry, I'm going to directly compare them, of course. You have like a small Chicago group, Naughton's from Chicago. So he made this kind of McNaughton's from Chicago. So he's used like a Chicago group besides Rooker being imported from Arkansas. But like he was like a product. We imported that boy from Arkansas. But it's strange. You look at Henry, the eyes of this weird documentary style kind of Chicago group. And then you're looking at Henry through this Texas group of filmmakers, these indie actors and all this kind of stuff like that. So it's really, really awesome to have both films and just look at, they're made relatively around the same time, relatively released probably around the same time. It just kind of blows my mind. And the more I watch this, the more I like it. I think Henry is just the you know what about Henry is, it's more of a character-driven story because you have that conflict between Henry and Otis where they almost make Henry more heroic, but then the end's like, oh, wow. But in this one, right from the beginning, Daniel Hawks is who they call him. Daniel Lee Hawks is a monster. And Henry is a monster in the film as well, in Henry, but there's never really a light on Daniel Hawks. And if you watched any of the documentaries about Henry and Otis, they lied all the time. So it's really hard to grasp what was true, all this kind of bullshit like that. But what I like about this one is a big chunk of the film takes place. They're mostly flashbacks. It's kind of just in a police interrogation room. And they used Henry to solve a lot of missing persons cases in the area and all around the country. And this is kind of the initial meeting, and he kind of glimpses or talks about like stories in there. Instead of having Otis like Henry does, it's Moon. Moon Luton, and they do have Molly as well, and that's basically Becky. Now, I'm going to say this. I think that Confessions of a Serial Killer is more accurately close to the true story of Henry. I think they looked at some of the court cases. It was a bigger in Texas, all that kind of stuff just fit more closely to the real story, especially them living on the farm and Becky, Molly, and Daniel having some sort of relationship, and the homosexual relationships between Moon and Daniel in this. It's kind of mind-boggling how much there's similarities in just terms of soundtrack and things like that. These guys both had similar ideas to making this movie. I believe the director's name Blair. They both had similar ideas to how to approach this movie in kind of a weird documentary style thing, right? Now, Henry, it's just filmed that way, and it feels like it. This one has like that, almost like it's like recreations of the crimes, of course. Then again, they take liberties. Henry says he mentions like having his arm in a sling, which is an infamous Ted Bundy thing. And honestly, maybe Henry did that as well. But you get glimpses of the real Daniel Hawkes. I think that if you look at Henry's personality and other things, I think that Robert Burns fits more with the character. I think it's really fantastic and very subtle performance. I think it's very matter of fact, Nobody's looking at the camera and being like this. Everybody seems so natural. It's really, really unnerving. And I think that's true about Henry as well. But I think, as weird as this sounds, no one would ever say Henry's like a grandiose version of anything. But Confessions of a Serial Killer is less grandiose than Henry. It feels less like a movie. It feels more real. And I got to say that rewatching it, I thought it was great. It's bothersome. There's a really graphic rape scene in here, which is probably more disturbing than almost anything in Henry. Henry has its moments, though, of course, the video camera stuff, which I think is probably more graphic and more disturbing watching as a viewer through their eyes. But the rape scene in this movie, it's always stuck with me as one of the nastiest and most repulsive things I've ever seen. The guy who plays Moon Luton was actually a cop at one point, and he's just really good at playing that creepy kind of, he's the oddest character. He's just gross. The dialogue that him and Robert Burns have seems very natural. I think they captured the character of Molly, Becky, more realistically here. And watching this version, I was like, man, I don't remember this explicit nudity, but there's nudity in the film. I'm not super explicit, but it's there. And there's violence. The retelling of the stories, you glimpse into his past. You actually see like his childhood, which stuff that really happened, and they mentioned in the commentary. Now, I was hoping in the commentary to talk about the history of the releases and how the film was like kind of looked at when it came out. But they more so, it's the cinematographer, the director, and one of the lead actresses who plays Molly. And they're talking about just the movie and people in here talking about Burns and the guy who played Moon and the detective who basically they said they had to edit around a performance. And when I watch it in screen, whoever edited this did a really good job because I didn't notice that he was bad or anything like that. I was like, this is actually pretty well done. So I actually was impressed with his performance until they said that, and then I was like, his thinking, which is thinking of his lines, seems like he's thinking of what Henry's saying or Daniel. There's some generally really memorable lines in here. The last line that Daniel Hawkins has is memorable, and this version being an hour and 46 minutes, you think, man, this kind of wears out as well. No. I think it flows pretty well. I think the pacing's good. And Henry's really a short film, 85 minutes. And the original version of this, I think, was shorter as well. The UK version is cut. This has some slasher aspects as well. Some people would say that there's a lot of slasher elements in here. But this is a really excellent release from On Earth. Besides that, of course, we have the commentary, like I said, with John Dwyer, Mark Blair, director of photography Leighton Baylock, and actor Sidney Brammer. The Henry Lee Lucas story by author and TV news correspondent James Moore. That's about 6 minutes. This guy's right, says the facts, does a really good job. You get everything you need to know. And then we also have Rondo and Bob, full-length documentary on Robert Burns and actor Rondo Hatton. And they're both Texas kind of natives, so they talk about that a bit. There's some recreations in there where somebody plays Robert Burns, somebody plays Gunnar Hansen. And you're like, it's a little rough on the recreations, acting-wise and everything like that. But hey, the documentary has some good information. And we have Polaroid gallery, promotional gallery, and trailer. A great film, honestly. I really want to know, maybe this was put out in 87, like it says on the back here, but it's always listed as 85 in Internet Movie Database. Honestly, it's hard to say. It's hard to say when this thing did come out. But Confessions of a Serial Killer, everybody loves the video store scene too. There's in there. There's a lot of similarities to Henry. And I don't want to say, that Henry's so much better. But it is, but this is so different, and it's such a good. Both of them together make probably the more accurate, perfect Henry movie in terms of entertainment. And it's funny saying these disturbing ass movies are entertaining, but they're interesting as hell. I will be, and I like the Texas feel, the Texas look. There's a lot in here that Henry doesn't have that I think Henry could have used, but I think together they kind of paint the ultimate film picture of a deranged mind. Great release from Unearthed Films. Check it out. Okay, this next one here is from Radiance Films, 1971 by Kinji Fukasaku. And this is Sympathy for the Underdog. And I've covered a bunch of his films. He did Green Slime, Battle Royale, but Crest of Betrayal. He did Virus from 1980, from 81. He did Samurai Reincarnation. He is a very prolific, very excellent director, Battles Without Honor and Humanity. He probably... For the run, he might be top 10 Japanese filmmakers of all time. And I know that's big shoes. You got Kurosawa and so many people, Takashi Miike, so many great directors from all different time periods. But this is an excellent film. It is a Yakuza film, and it opens up, and you're like, is there a first one? I feel like I've seen the first one because it's so similar to other Yakuza movies. But as it progresses, I'm like, I guess I haven't. And... it kind of opens up where we have this Yakuza getting released from prison, and he meets his two buddies show up, and they're like, hey, I'm sorry, we don't have anything. He's like, what's expected, and they were wronged by this big corporation that came in and kind of muscled the smaller Yakuza members out, mob bosses, and made a big deal with one of the huge Yakuza guys. And they were pushed out. A lot of other gangs were pushed out as well. They meet with the old gang, and they all have nicknames like Gunshot and whatnot. And there's kind of a guy that him and he has a shaky past with, but he ends up sticking his neck out for him and saving him because he tries to assassinate the Yakuza boss, and he's unsuccessful. He's really sick. So these two kind of form a bond, and they start to lead this gang. And what they decide to go is to Okinawa, where it is a strange history of Okinawa at this time. This movie takes place, I believe. There's still like American soldiers preoccupied here and all that kind of stuff like that. So they want to get in on this trade because they realize it's much easier. And some of the crime bosses around this area are very familiar faces, like Hanzo the Razor, I think. This guy's in a slew of movies. Excellent actor. And... He's in a handful of these. Is like a big, like just a screen presence. He's big. He's very intimidating, but he's really likable. So they get in here and they start to infiltrate and everything. And they have some turmoil. Some of their gang ends up dead. But what happens is the old Yakuza guys that they're out there, the big business guy and the old Yakuza boss end up moving to Okinawa, and they want to set up shop as well. So they're not going to stand for that. What happens is just kind of like last moments of this awesome like Yakuza gang that has pretty much been wiped out except a handful of people. So it's like it reminds you of the Wild Bunch. And this movie has an ending that is the Wild Bunch. Being 1969, the Wild Bunch came out and just changed a lot of stuff, and this is 71. If you ever were like, man, I'd really like to see a Yakuza fast-paced, Wild Bunch, here you go. Now, it's not as impressive as the Wild Bunch shootout. Nothing has ever been, if you ask me, in terms of Westerns. I'm just, and besides that, and Once Upon a Time in the West, those movies are just so perfect that it's just, it's mind-boggling. But the ending in this is amazing. The characters are amazing. So often do they have convoluted stories in Yakuza or gangster films or from any country where you're like, I don't know who a lot of these characters are. They're introducing them quick. You know who all these characters are. They all serve their purpose. They're all well acted. They're all familiar character actors. Sympathy for the Underdog was wonderful. I loved it. As far as the special features are concerned, we have audio commentary by Yakuza film expert Nathan Stewart, interview with Fukasaku biographer Oliver Haduchi, visual essay on Okinawa on screen by film historian author Aaron Giro, trailer, new and improved English subtitle translation, reversible cover art, and a booklet. So yeah, this is a nice release. This is AB locked. The talking about Yakuza and everything like that was interesting. And like while this started, I was like, oh, this is a sequel, right? Am I missing the first one? And it fell right into there. They set it up so perfect that you're like, oh, you feel like you've seen the first movie. You know who these characters are, and they're like, the first one's not as good as this one. You're like, there is no other one. This is it. Sympathy for the Underdog, excellent stuff. Recommended. Radiance Films. And they have just announced some other stuff coming out that looks great. There's a Japanese horror film like Dogora, which I want to see for years. So that's coming out. Excellent stuff. Okay, the next one is a couple theater watches. So the first one I'm going to do is Maxxine by Ty West, the end of a trilogy. Of course, X and Pearl are both part of that trilogy. So first and foremost, spoiler free. I liked the film. I thought it was very good. I thought Mia Goth was great. I thought the person who played the director in the film was also very good. I thought that some of the other acting was shaky just by certain people. I thought the look was good. I thought the set design was good. I thought the first two acts were stronger. Still overall, I really like the movie. Not as good as Extra Pearl, but I would recommend checking it out. Recreation of LA and all that kind of stuff was really cool in the 80s. I'm a big 80s fan. I'm a big, kind of fan of what they're talking about and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I really liked Maxxine. Not perfect, but I'll get into that during my spoiler review. So here we're going in spoiler review. So basically, Mia Goth, it makes it to there, and of course she's haunted by her past from X and all that. But somebody knows about her past, and we know too. We know right away that her past comes from her religious upbringing, and she has a private eye in her tail, played very bizarrely by Kevin Bacon. Now it was good at times, but it also was leaning into that territory where you're looking at Johnny Depp from what was that one, Tusk, where you're like, what is this, man? It's like Kevin Bacon to me is an actor that always goes for it. He's kind of like Ethan Hawke. He's willing to try weird things. Now Kevin Bacon's more going to try bizarre, crazy roles, and a lot of times he does a good job. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know what the fuck he's doing. I don't hate it, but I'm just like, what in the world is this, Kevin Bacon? I can't hate it, but I don't love it either. I think sometimes he is amazing, but this one I was like, hey, it's good and it's weird. I don't know if it fits the movie, to be honest. Giancarlo Esposito is in here. He's excellent. Now, he fits the movie. And the very end here, this is my biggest complaint. There's a lot of giallo tendencies. Now, when you think giallo, is there a mystery? No. I mean, I think you'll figure out who the killer is right away. The person who plays the killer, their performance was so on the nose and poor. And I hate saying this, it was so bad for some big reveal. I mean, we already knew, but the performance is not good. It was terrible. And normally I wouldn't say that, but it was a really bad performance to the point where it single-handedly dropped as half a star. You needed someone in that role that was going to kill it. That was going to blow your fucking mind. And this person was not it. There's a couple cops in the story that are funny. They have some good back and forth, some setups. There's some great video store stuff where Mia Goth has a friend that works in a video store. Really great colors, all that kind of stuff. Overall, I would recommend this. There's some Miss 45 shit going on, which I loved in an alleyway. Probably one of my favorite scenes. Seeing the Psycho set, there's a lot of shout outs to Psycho. There's shout outs to Chinatown. A lot of homages and things like that. And I thought they were going to do a couple things they didn't do, but they kind of let you think they might. Overall, Maxxine's pretty good. Pretty good film. Not as good as Extra Pearl, but hey, I love those movies, so that's not a knock on it. It's just like, this movie's good, but this movie's not as good as those ones. And I mean, it's so impossible not to compare them, even though all three of them are their own beast, right? So yeah, Maxxine, good stuff. Okay, the next one was kind of a small little screening called The Emasculator, and this is by the same director who did Night of the Zodiac, which I believe came out last year. And they're a Michigan director, makes indie films. Their other film was put out by SRS. Night of the Zodiac was pretty good. It's like a throwback SOV, a lot of deep cut kind of shout outs to the Poloni brothers, all sorts of stuff. Where I was watching that, I was like, this is really in depth about its knowledge of shot on video movies, and I was impressed with the director. She did a very good job, and she was very knowledgeable about the subject. So my friend Carly Sonnenfeld, she's been on 22 Shots. She was on a podcast with JP. She's an actress, and she's acted in a handful of movies now, a bunch actually. She's very busy about it. So she had a role in this Emasculator movie. So I went to the screening with her and to check it out. And you guys are going to take that with a grain of salt now, because I'm saying it's my friends in the movie, yada yada. Yeah, I'm going to be biased, probably subconsciously. All right. First and foremost, I enjoyed the film. I thought it was pretty cool. It is a rape revenge movie about somebody losing their dicks. You gotta love that, right? And it ties in with Maxxine too. Something like that happens in the movie as well. But so what happens is there's a rape that's pretty nasty, and a guy who's down on his luck, a father or somebody who's just an overall, fuck up. He's an alcoholic. He has a lot of loss. He decides to use this old kind of cattle, basically castration device to take out the bad guys. Now, the bad guys, there's about 4, main bad guys here that they're focused on, and they're like a gang. And one of them's a film-obsessed kind of nerd, so you get a lot of porno shout-outs in that. Like, you'll notice things like last names, like Stillo, like Krug Stillo from Last House on the Left. You'll hear like, oh, his name's Cunningham. So you're like, oh, Sean Cunningham. See, there's tons of shout-outs and small little things like that, nods to other movies. They mentioned Water Power, all that kind of shit like that. So, it has these little kind of shout-outs to roughies and exploitations, filmmaking, all that kind of stuff. But this gang is police officers. 3 of them are, and they do commit this horrible rape. Now, the weird thing is, like, the victim, who's played by Carly, she does a really good job in it. Now, she does a really good job. She and the father are playing it more of a straight kind of character study. They're being more into like down to earth and everything like that. And the cops, they are just completely cartoon kind of types. Where they're obsessed. Their characters are basically like a gimmick they have. Like and that happens a lot with like some of the later day Death Wish sequels. Somehow they manage to juggle that. I don't know how the fuck, that's the giggler. All he does is giggle. And Death Wish 3, you're like, what the fuck is this? But somehow it works a little bit better in that world. Now this, it's kind of blending it and does it. There's a guy that eats Cheetos. There's the filmmaker guy. There's a guy with the slick back hair and leather jacket. There's a guy who is like in a big bathtub and he's like distributing the movie. So you get this kind of idea. These are kind of cartoonish weirdos. Now, I know a bunch of the actors aren't really like real long actors. I think that the director just knows them and works with them and puts them in the movie, which is really cool. So it does have that quality. The acting ranges, I don't think anybody's like, oh, that's such a bad performance. No, especially in an indie movie level. Tim Ritter produced this. Tim Ritter, legendary kind of low budget director from stuff like Truth or Dare, Killing Spree, Day of the Reaper, all these kind of movies. I actually covered a lot of Tim Ritter's early stuff on this channel years ago, so look it up, see my opinion on that stuff. I do enjoy a lot of it. So yeah, he's also makes a little cameo in here. So the revenge is great. The genital mutilation, which is a word that I said many times on this channel, is brutal. I mean, there's a lot of nasty dick stuff happening here. A lot of people get fucked up, and the ending is really good. I would recommend this. I really like this for an indie movie, and I've been getting, I've kind of been burnt out on a lot of indie movies. Just they not really my thing, but this was totally my thing. Kind of a rape revenge, kind of crazy grindhouse SOV style, nasty fucking weird little movie. I liked it. Director was very cool, very nice. Talking to her, yeah, she made a bunch of props for it. It's a cool movie. I'll put links below. I don't know if it's anywhere to buy. Maybe a VHS. I don't know if the director has social media. So it's called The Emasculator. Check that out, or check out Night of the Zodiac too. If you've seen that one, I think you'll like this one. I think I like this one a little bit better. I do. But yeah, good stuff. Check it out.
I know I'm human. If you were all these things, then you just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to. But it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
You son of a bitch, you moved the cemetery, but you left the bodies, didn't you? You son of a bitch, you left the bodies and you only moved the headstones! You only moved the headstones! Why?
For a girl like you to come into my life, I've been waiting for a girl like you, who loves and will survive. I've been waiting for someone new to make me
What's in the basket?
Open season!
How do we know she is alive?
Please stop it. There's no more time. You've got to... Please stop it. Stop it now. Turn it off. Turn it off. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
All right, the first one, speaking of SOV, is Boardinghouse. All these years, I never fucking watched Boardinghouse. This is the third time I bought Boardinghouse. I had the old Code Red DVD. Then I had the Slasher Video DVD. And now I have the EGFA Blu-ray. And it's 1982. I'm so excited. I was so excited to watch Boardinghouse for the first time. Now, Boardinghouse has a long history of different cuts. Boardinghouse was a SOV movie made in 82, and then it was like blown up on 35 millimeter and played in theaters. Now, I don't know exactly when it played in theaters. Like, you kind of arguing 83. So Sledgehammer might have played first, which Joseph Zimba, who runs EGFA, was involved with EGFA, talked about that. But Boardinghouse was made first. So Sledgehammer, Boardinghouse, there's always this big debate. Which one's first? Which one's first? So it always goes back and forth, right? Blood Cult was the first one made for the VHS market, according to Blood Cult. That's 85. So those three are always the ones that are brought up. I've seen Sledgehammer. I've seen Revenge. I've seen, that's a sequel to Blood Cult, which is an SOV. And I've seen The Ripper, and I've seen a lot of these early SOV movies. And of course, I now have seen Boardinghouse. I've seen the trailer a bunch. And I think the reason it pushed me away from Boardinghouse for years was, like, everyone's like, it's the worst fucking thing ever, yada, yada, yada. But what they were referring to, a lot of them, was the Slasher Video director's cut, which is not really a director's cut according to the commentary. It is a 2.5 hour, basically an assembly cut, put in with a lot of bloopers and stuff. So Boardinghouse follows a story of this kind of guy who is like, hey, I'm going to buy this boarding house. He inherited this boarding house. So what he does, it has 10 rooms. He's like, puts out an ad. He's like, hey, a bunch of hot babes, 18 to 25, come live at the boarding house for $100. He's like, it's going to be like a swinger's paradise. Yeah. So basically a bunch of pretty girls come live with this guy. Did I mention he has telekinesis or telekinetic powers? That's right. He moves soap in the bathtub when he can. He sits there and he's just intense as shit. He's like one of these guys that like lays out in the sun all day and like gets a tan and like he's just in very trim shape and just tans his body all the time. He gives me that vibe. But right away, weird shit starts happening, and we find out in the very beginning, due to these amazing little like text things that come out like bam, 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 like police files. I don't know, and it's like so and so murdered. It's a lot of fun. So it has this whole exposition dump in the fucking beginning credits, and then we get into the boarding house. It's 82 now, and weird shit starts happening. It's a long time before someone actually is killed. There's a decent amount of nudity. A girl's in the shower and the blood comes everywhere, and then she like tries to get out, but she can't get out, of course, and those breastises are going to hit the shower thing, and we're on the other side. We're going to see it. We're going to see breasts pushing against the thing. And it's 1982 exploitative nonsense. sense. And then her head turns into a giant mouse thing. Yeah, it is a weird, bizarre film. And then the reveal, like the one girl starts using telekinetic powers as well. And it's just a fucking absurd, bizarre, weird movie. Now, I was on here talking about Last Slumber Party, which I was like, I don't like this. This isn't for me. And it's such a fine line, right? Because I'm sitting here like, I don't really care for Last Slumber Party. I think it just crosses that line of being inept and bad, too bad. Now, Boardinghouse, I'm like, I like this. I think that it is good enough, you know, I mean, and entertaining enough. And actually, like, I feel like they tried a little bit more. I don't know if that's necessarily the truth. Last Slumber Party probably had more financial issues, but Boardinghouse is fun. There's a lot of, like, you know, good-looking people, naked. There's some party scenes. There's some silly dialogue. There's a lot of characters. Sometimes you're like, where are they going? Where are they coming from? There's some hilarious deaths, including a private eye who gets electrocuted. The trailer is fantastic. It's really bizarre that it was they say the only SOV movie ever blown up to 35mm, and I fucking believe it, guys. I really do believe it. It's more common, you know, that a movie is shot on 16mm or 8mm or something and edited on tape, and then the elements are lost, and that's where people come in and be like, that is actually SOV. It's like, bro, Truth or Dare ain't SOV. Killing Spree ain't SOV. Those were shot on film, and then they were edited on tape, and the elements were fucking lost, so they are not SOV. And there's other things like some people just assume the video dead is SOV because, oh, it's the video dead. It must be shot on video. It's not. I'm not to be rude, but it's not. There's a lot of movies that people think are SOV, but they aren't SOV. And you know, Boardinghouse is SOV, but it's somehow on fucking film, which is the weirdest thing ever. So they have 3 cuts on here. They have that version on film, which is a lot of fucking scratches, and then they have one remastered from the Tape Master, and then they have another cut, which was under the term Psycho Killer. I watched, you know, the one on film, and then I watched the other cut too, and just to see how it is, the 3/4 master. I thought that looked the 3/4 Tape Master, and I thought that looked better, honestly. I thought that looked better than the film one. But as far as the special features, we have theatrical cut preserved in 2K from original 35 release print. That's probably how people saw it in theaters, if they did. Original home video cut transferred from 3/4 master tape. Theatrical cut, partial commentary. We have that with Joseph Zimba. I hope I'm saying his name right, but he talks a lot of good things about the movie. Some interesting things too, and he's very quick about it. Theatrical cut commentary with star Marlo McKinley and Sean King. 35 theatrical trailer, and then we have Psycho Killer, previously unreleased alternate cut of Boardinghouse, transferred from the one tape master. Sally and Jesse. 1989, previously unreleased family film from the makers of Boardinghouse, preserved in 2K from 16mm answer print. Sally and Jess commentary, Sally and Jess on-set footage, music video. So there we go. Notice, Boardinghouse was shot and edited on tape. Please approach the technical quality of our transfers with empathy. That's right. Be empathetic towards Boardinghouse, as the Joseph Zimbo would want you to be. But it's fun. It's entertaining, and it's probably the biggest SOV movie I had not seen. I don't know why, but here we go. Finally watched it. Up next is an all-time favorite. I think I actually have a beta tape of this. I'm going to pull it out, so you guys are going to see me duck down again. Because this is the life, right? I don't even have a beta player. I got a bunch of these betas years ago. But yeah, this is The Class of 1984 from 1982, directed by Mark Lester, who I personally think is an underrated director. Here's my little beta. Look how small betas are if you compare it to VHS. Not all betas are this short, but yeah. So that's a VHS over here, and this is a beta. So yeah, Vestron release here. But yeah, anyways, little classic movie, beta tape here. How many people have a beta of Class of 1984? But yeah, here we go. Written by Tom Holland, you know, who would go on to direct Child's Play. I actually talked about Tom Holland for 82 before. He wrote The Beast Within. Yeah, but Class of 1984, directed by Mark Lester, who would go on to do the sequel, the semi-sequel, Class of 1999 and 1990. Loved that movie. He also directed Commando. He also did Firestarter. He also did Armed and Dangerous with John Candy, Eugene Levy. And it's a great movie as well. Kenneth McMillan, who I talked about, you know, being in, what was the movie he was just in? He was just in Killing Hour from 82. So it's just like, it never ends, right? But yeah, so Class of 1984. This is a Canadian-American co-production. It stars Perry King from Killing Hour, also with Kenneth McMillan. That's crazy, right? And also has Roddy McDowall, one of my all-time favorites. Originally, the director wanted Dennis Weaver from the TV movie Don't Go to Sleep. Yeah, so it's all full circle. It also has Van Patten, one of the Timothy Van Patten, who the brother of, you know, the guy from Hell Night the year before, and he ended up becoming a writer, director on Sopranos and all that kind of stuff, a big writer, I believe, producer, I think, on the Sopranos TV series. So, who else is in here? Michael J. Fox has a small role, and, you know, Keith Knight, who pops up in great things like My Bloody Valentine, Meatballs, of Unknown Origin. He's just a really cool, you know, actor. And Stephen Ingram, who is in Fear No Evil, from the previous year. So My Bloody Valentine's the previous year as well. So a lot of these actors continue to work throughout the 80s and before and after, all that kind of stuff. So the class of 1984, it opens up and it says this gives you these stats, who knows if they're true, basically about the crime being out of hand. They don't give much time in their leeway. Usually when it's like, this movie takes place in the year 2078 and it's like 1984 and you're like, oh shit. You know, Back to the Future, all that stuff. This one gives you 2 years. Made in 82, released in 82. It's class of 1984. It's like, we ain't got no fucking time. We gotta fix this. Opens up with these statistics telling you how much violent crime is in these schools, and then boom comes in, I am the future. Bow, bow. Alice fucking Cooper. You know, great song. Love Alice Cooper. Love that song. And it just fits perfectly. This is a movie that's been with me ever since I was probably like 13 years old. So class of 1984, I've seen a million times, and I'm biased towards it, yes, I will admit, and rewatching it for the probably 20th time. I haven't watched it since the show, though. There are some dated things, some of the dialogue and whatnot, and some of the kind of, like, silliness, but a lot of that is just a product of its time, right? So Perry King's a new teacher. He gets a job at here, and he realizes the school is awful. There's a group of punks that are in his class led by Stegman, the Van Patten, and he has 4 other punks that are in there. Keith Knight is Barnyard. He's a big thug. And then we have Patsy. She's like a punk rock girl. And then we have Drugstore. He's like this little skinny guy, Stephen Ingram, but he's like a big druggie. And then we have Fallon, who's more of another muscle kind of guy along with Barnyard. So he has like 2 muscle, the drug guy, and then the crazy kind of girl gang. And Stegman is kind of very Nazi-like, very kind of, I come from the upper crust kind of area, and I'm just like that kind of prototype piece of shit, right? Career criminal possibly, but maybe he'll get into politics or something later on. You never know. Right away they cause problems for Perry King, and it starts to escalate when he starts to kind of stand up and fight back. Roddy McDowell is a fellow teacher who's an alcoholic who's kind of given up on you know, teaching the kids. The principal's hands are tied, and we get back to that whole thing, right? What was the movie I was just watching? The Seduction, right? Oh, my hands are tied. They're juveniles. And that's a seduction. Remember, Vince Edwards is like, I can't do nothing. I just have to follow the law. And everybody's like, break the law. Be a vigilante. That's a class of 1984 as well. It's like, I can't do nothing, you know? The juveniles. Al Waxman is the police officer who's in Spasms, the crazy-ass 83 movie with, you know, Oliver Reed, where he's like, they're bloating with a giant fucking snake. Yeah, there's 2 snake movies with Oliver Reed. Go figure. But yeah, so Al Waxman's a cop, and he's like, I can't do nothing. They're minors, and it starts to escalate to the point of insanity. At one point, there's gonna be spoilers here. Roddy McDowell's animals are killed, and he's like the biology teacher, and he pulls a gun the next day on the kids. And you know, nowadays, if you ever have a gun in school or do anything violent, you're done. You're out of here. They're like, they send Roddy McDowell home. They're like, go home for the day. You'll be fine. It's like, he pulled a gun on people. There's like, and the kids all have weapons and everything like that. It's insane, you know, like the directors in the film, like people involved are like, you know, it's very prophetic. And you're like, is it? I mean, it is. The violence in school is undeniable, but it's a different kind of violence. It's school shootings, right? I'm not sure. I've been there in a while, but I know the bullying exists online, but the school shootings are completely insane. So the gun violence is there and all that kind of shit. It's in the newspaper every day, but this kind of violence, right? Gang violence. Is it up? Or is it more school shootings? I'm not 100%. Of course, there's a great gang fight. What I love about this movie is, you know, you're like, is this going to be like, you know, the movie where the teacher comes around and helps the kids and everything like that? No, this is an exploitation film. And Mark Lester's really good at making those. And he always has good cast. So what happens is there's a showdown in the school at the end where you know, Perry King, great looking guy, you know, from stuff like Andy Warhol's Bad, Killing Hour, Lipstick, he's going to take out this gang. And it is violent as shit. There's this great scene from Barnyard, the big guy, Keith Knight. He comes after him, and their performances are all really good. They come across like assholes. They're really good in this. They have good dialogue, and they're just like horrible kids. I mean, they're running like prostitution rackets, drug rackets. But Barnyard realizes one of his friends was killed, and he snaps. And you know, Norris is the teacher, and he screams his name, and Norris has a lead pipe, and Barnyard comes at him like this, and he starts hitting him with the lead pipe, but Barnyard's just like blocking the thing. It's one of my favorite scenes just because it's just such a cool scene where he's just like boom, 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 and you know, from my understanding, a lot of the punks weren't really like the bullies or the violent ones in school at the time, you know, but that's just the thing that a lot of older people would see, and they're like, well, right, punks, well, whatever it is, it's different, it's weird, but in honesty, the looks are awesome. So, I mean, I'm glad that the punks were kind of immortalized in movies, even if it was inaccurate. Return of the Living Dead, class of 1984. You know, punks are just a huge part of the 80s, and I love the look. I mean, even in New Year's Evil from 1980. But, I love class of 1984. It's a favorite. I don't really consider it a horror. I do consider it horror adjacent, so it'll probably appear in a list that's like my horror adjacent list, of course, and it'll probably be right at the fucking top, to be honest. But as far as the special features are concerned, we have new high definition transfer of the film from the Interpositive, new interviews with director Mark Lester, actors Lisa Langlois and Aaron Noble, and composer Lalo Schifrin, who does a great job. He did The Seduction too. We also have an interview with Perry King, which is really long too, and he's very interesting and very smart guy, and tells a really funny story about being in the unemployment line. Audio commentary with Mark Lester, Blood and Blackboards, which I believe is the old school one that was on the old Anchor Bay DVD, which is featuring interviews with Mark Lester and actor Mary Lynn Ross. So one of my all-time favorite movies. It doesn't hold up as well. You know, like, there is some stuff that sticks out. Still love it. Not enough to hurt the movie for me. But, it is really a fun watch in a crazy exploitation way. I love revenge films. I'm huge into them. I love Western revenge films, crime revenge films. I just love revenge films. Probably because I don't really take revenge. So it's very cathartic for me. I know you got, like, the Death Wish movies. It's like, I'm not going out there shooting people, okay? It's just a fucking movie. It's only a movie. It's only a movie. It's only a movie, right? Okay, the next one up is a TV movie from 1982 called Cry for the Strangers, directed by Peter Medak. Yeah, the guy who did Changeling, doing another TV movie. Is Changeling technically an HBO TV movie? It's a fucking excellent movie with George C. Scott. So this one, Cry for Strangers. Now, this one is about kind of a old cursed town. In the opening, we see a really screwed up cursed town like moment from the past where, like, this young boy is looking for his grandparents, and it's just like sepia tone, if I'm not mistaken, and he goes out on the beach and they're buried, and it's really, really a fucked up scene. And we get the idea that this town hasn't been right ever since. So, I can't think. Is he a doctor? Yeah, he's a psychiatrist. Him and his wife, of course he's a psychiatrist, are gonna vacation in this small town with their kids, and they're gonna take them here and stay at this old house where the tragedy happened, of course. They run into somebody that he used to, he was a doctor for their kid, and he had a lot of problems. It sounds like the kid was ADHD and they're blown out of proportion. Like, he was an absolute monster. He's a monster. Now he's fine. Because he lives in a small town somehow. It's cured him, and it interests the doctor. He starts to kind of talk to the small town folks, people, and meet them. Brian Keith is the sheriff from Young Guns and The Mountain Men and a million other fucking movies. Good actor for sure. My dad always liked The Mountain Men. I never got a chance to watch that movie. I should watch it in his honor, to be honest. He's a big fan of that one. But, Brian Keith, I always remember from Young Guns and a couple other films, too. He's got a great line in that. But I think I talked about it when I talked about Young Guns. But, so what happens is he's pretty solid in this film. He's the biggest actor to me. I feel like I'm forgetting a couple others that are known. But weird shit starts happening. Oh, Martin Kove has a role in here as well. And every night the storm comes in. A big storm comes in here. This is actually a West Coast, although it looks very much East Coast, New England style thing. It's on the West Coast. And a big storm comes in, and somebody ends up dead. And nobody really knows why. And they start to think, is there something supernatural here? This young boy, the doctor, starts to see strange things, and people end up dead. And they're all for the strangers. The people that aren't born in this town are ending up killed. And, it gets the good atmosphere. The quality I watched is not great. This is a pretty solid movie. It's well made, though. It's well acted. It's well directed. The atmosphere is creepy. It's suspenseful. So, it's a good film. But honestly, it needs a better release to tell how great it actually is. I mean, how good I'm sure the cinematography is better than I looked at it. You know what I mean? It looks like so shitty and muddy because it's just a VHS or TV rip. But I like this. I thought it was pretty good. I thought the leads were good. Man, I feel like I know the two lead actors and they're just slipping my mind. They're very memorable kind of just actors, working actors. Brian Keith is the biggest in here, of course. Like I said, Martin Kove. It's not gratuitously violent, but it is kind of scary. There's a very very funny thing about this movie is like where I've never seen someone neglect a dog so bad. There's a giant storm coming, and the kid's like, "Can we have the dog inside?" He's like, "No, I told you no." So he's just like, just let the dog sit out. He didn't get out of the house. And then the dog disappears, and he's like, "I want to look for my dog." He's like, "I told you no." And you're like, well, these fucking people do not give a shit about their pet. It's pretty fucking crazy. Nowadays, that would never fly in a movie. People like up in arms about that writing, and they would just make this guy like the world's biggest villain. He's not a villain in this movie, but they would in this one. So good atmosphere and Cry for the Strangers. Well acted. You know, just a TV movie. It's solid. I mean, it is a TV movie. It's not like amazing. Like, it's not going to be Dark Knight of the Scarecrow caliber great, or it's not even going to be Don't Go to Sleep great, but it's good, and I liked it, and I would like to see a nicer print of it possibly. Okay, the next TV movie, well, is it a TV movie? It sure fucking feels like it, but I don't think it is Echoes, or Living Nightmare. And this one I put in, and I was like, this is rough. It's fucking rough. And I don't mean rough like this is gratuitous or violent or scary. This was a tedious motherfucker to get through. So the first thing I'll say is, before I forget, Mike Kellin is in it. Love Mike Kellin, and it's funny to watch his trajectory in acting, you know, from stuff like The Incident in the 60s. But in the 80s, he had a nice little output, right, in terms of horror. In 81, he's in Just Before Dawn. In 82, he's in this one. And then 83, he's in fucking Sleepaway Camp. So Mike Kellin, man, killing it. I love Mike Kellin. He's good in this. He's the best part of this movie. Mike Kellin is the best part. So we have an artiste who is basically, I think, living on grant money from his dead, deceased father, and, you know, his mother, and the two older women in here, like the psychic lady and the mother, are good actors. They're the best parts of the movie, along with Mike Kellin. The older vets are good in here. And I don't think that the lead actor's horrible. He just plays a very, you know, I'm over it kind of character. Like that movie I talked about, of, you know, Early Frost. Was that Early Frost? No, it was Darkroom, the Australian movie, where I was just like, from 82, I was like, I don't want to watch this fucking whiny baby anymore. Little baby. And, you know, it's not like you're like, oh, you don't need to like, I went over this before, I don't need to like him, I need to find him interesting. And after, this guy's wearing out his fucking welcome real quick. And this guy wore out his welcome real fast. He's an artist, but then he starts to have these weird hallucinations where he's like somehow tied to like a brother from the past, and he's reliving these things. Similar to like Life After Life, the Hong Kong movie, but not nearly as cool or as good. But that was more reincarnation, reliving, having these focuses. A cool movie. This not so much, so they kind of flashes back where there's like a love triangle, and he's fighting this guy, his brother or something, over this, and the psychic tells him that he possibly had a brother and all this kind of stuff. And the more he learns, the more unhinged he becomes, the more he pushes away people. And he has a great argument with Mike Kellin. He pushes away his girlfriend at the time, and she immediately jumps into the arms of someone else, and there's a lot of hateful, like, crazy arguments and whatnot, and it's just tedious, and it's boring, and it doesn't really go anywhere. And there's a million other movies like it that are better, that incorporate art, that incorporate, you know, past fucking lives, that incorporate so many things. Like if you look at Retribution from 87, that's a better movie. If you look at, you know, Life After Life, that's a better movie. If you look at any of these movies that involve art or involve something else like that, they're just better. This is a very weak effort, unfortunately, and it feels like a TV movie. I do like the performance by the mother and the psychiatrist. I can't think of, they're both kind of, they seem like working actresses for a very long time. Mike Kellen's good, but that's all I can say about this movie. I just like this a lot. I mean, it's not like technically the worst made movie or anything like that. It's just boring and tedious and not interesting to me, and I wouldn't recommend Echoes or Living Nightmare. Both titles, Echoes is the better title, I would say. You know, Echoes of the Past. Fuck off. Okay, the Patreon pick, I can't think. It's got to be Jim Simon probably picked this one. Sounds like a Jim Simon pick. And he picked Someone's Knocking at the Door. And this is a 2008 movie by Chad Ferrin. Now, I've covered a couple Chad Ferrin movies on here. I covered Parasites, which I really like. I've also covered, I've seen Unspeakable years ago. It was like his first feature-length film. Trumbo distributed that. And I watched Pig Killer on here. And I know he's got a couple other ones that just recently came out. And there's Scalper and some other ones. I should have picked them up. Maybe I will. So this is a movie I've had for a very long time, and I've heard a lot of fucked up things about it. Chad Ferrin, indie director, has made some pretty cool stuff. Seems to be working for a very long time, and I like seeing that. And this has Noah Segan in it. And you know what? I gotta pull my hat off that I don't ever fucking wear, because Noah Segan, awesome actor. You know, and it's so cool to see somebody that started off in shit like, he was in Cabin Fever 2, if I'm not mistaken, Dead Girl, Cabin Fever 2, Someone's Knocking at the Door, and then he's in, like, you know, Knives Out. Congrats, man. I'm glad he made it, because he deserves it. He's a good actor. He's the best actor in this fucking movie. This also has Vernon Wells in there, which is nice to see. And Ezra Buzzington, who was in, I think, one of the Hills Have Eyes remake movies, where he plays one of the mutants. But, so Someone's Knocking at My Door is a strange film. In the very beginning, we have a guy who's kind of shooting up doing these drugs. We don't really know what it is. And this beautiful girl knocks on the door. She's naked. She strips down. She's ready to go. And so is he. And then before we know what the hell's going on, the beautiful girl is no longer a beautiful girl. It is Ezra Buzzington. And he rapes this guy until he's dead. And call in, these 5 friends that are all kind of related to this guy one way or another. Noah Sagan is as well. There's a guy they call Spaz, unlovingly, who has, a stutter. There's a girl who seems to be a little bit nicer that dates Noah Sagan. There's kind of a dickhead guy, just a assortment of random characters. The cops get involved. I like the cop characters, 2 detectives. So they start to kind of interrogate this group of people, and they say what happened, all this situation. They kind of go back and they tell the story where they kind of snuck into this, under their medical students. They snuck into this facility and started digging through the files, found these weird drugs, and took them. And now all of them are starting to kind of experience weird shit. These people from the past, they kind of are like the characters from The Frighteners, right? Those 2, like Jake Busey and I can't think of the other person who played today, but the spree killers. But somehow, by taking these drugs and playing this old tape, like Session 9 style from the movie Session 9, they somehow infiltrated the real world. And now they're kind of going back and forth. And what they like to do is they like to fuck people to death. That's kind of their MO. So you have heads getting stuffed up vaginas. You got a monster dick raping people till they're dead. Pretty crazy, pretty graphic in a lot of ways, but I liked it because I'm a sick person, and I remember this time of movies, independent movies at this time, like 2005 to like 2010. Kind of having a soft spot for some of them. Like, I liked Cabin Fever 2 when it came out. I don't know if I'd still like it by Ty West, who I just talked about one of his movies. And I liked Dead Girl, and I still like Dead Girl. So this one I liked. It's not as well made as Dead Girl. Probably the budget's not there, so it's just hard to compare it. But it's low budget, it's dirty, it's a lot of sexual stuff in here. There's a scene where, there's a strap-on use, which I thought was kind of funny because this character's such a dickhead, and that's kind of an insult in this movie. It's supposed to be kind of like this guy's always like, being so mean to everybody, and then he's getting pegged, and you're just like, eh. But, I mean, I thought that scene was really well done. So, like, this is a good film. In an indie kind of nasty horror film kind of way. The twist at the end, I think maybe you'll piss some people off, but I think it's fitting. I do. I like it. I think that Someone's Knocking at My Door was good. And some people could say the ending's a cop-out, but in that kind of aspect, I think it does make a little bit more sense. I mean, if you're looking at terms of, endings like that, or explanations, I should say, not endings, explanations, it makes a lot more fucking sense in Slaughter Vomit Dolls, which is the explanation of that movie, and you're just like, bullshit artist. But hey, it is what it is. Someone's Knocking at the Door. Breaking Glass put this out. I don't think it's in print anymore. Directed by Chad Ferrin. Pretty crazy movie. Vernon Wells does have a nice little scene in here, as does Ezra Buzzington and whatnot. I feel like am I missing anyone? I always hate missing like an actor or actress that's pretty well known. But it's pretty graphic. Low budget kind of horror movie from the mid to late early aughts, 2005, 2008, somewhere around that time. Check it out if it sounds like it's up your alley. Love getting these questions, comments, and concerns. Ken Coakley, you're right about the movie with Linnea Quigley was Witch Trap. I did a mini marathon on Night of the Demons, Return of the Living Dead, Witch Trap, Witchboard, and Witchboard 2. I hadn't seen any of them except Return of the Living Dead in a long time. I just remember loving Witchboard, which is far superior to Witch Trap. I still like Witch Trap, but the acting, including Kevin Tenney, was awful as was the dialogue. I think Kevin Tenney, the actor, didn't show up, so he had to step in and do that day of. Especially when the Jackson character responded to the boss racist comment by saying, "I'll do my Bojangles Robinson and tam dance all over your ass." That was a reference to Bill Bojangles Robinson, an actor, dancer, and singer. He was the highest paid African-American entertainer during the first half of the 20th century. The reference is too obscure for anyone to understand. When Jackson was killed by the car, I mockingly said, "R.I.P. Bojangles Robinson." James W. Quinn, who was in Witchboard as well, had way too many one-liners, but I thought it was in Witchboard that Linnea Quigley met her end in the shower. Yeah, I remembered that it wasn't because I hadn't seen Witchboard in years, but I watched Witch Trap surprisingly a couple times in the last 5 years. Witchboard was made before Witch Trap, yet Witchboard had much better acting. I was so impressed with Stephen Nichols, who was a soap opera actor at the time. James W. Quinn, on the other hand, was very annoying, so his demise couldn't come soon enough. But I liked the dynamics between the Jim and Brandon characters. I'm a diehard bromantic and wanted them for future sequels. I had forgotten about the cameo in Witchboard 2 by Tom Allan as the Jim character having a newborn baby named Brandon. One last thing, in the past few weeks, we lost 2 actors from the worlds of horror. Kevin Brophy of Hell Knight and Eric V. Anderson from Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter. Both passed away. R.I.P. to both. R.I.P. to both. Indeed, R.I.P. Now, there is a third passing as of this writing. Shelley Duvall has just died. She will obviously be remembered for The Shining and Popeye as Olive Oil, but she worked a lot with Robert Altman by appearing in many Altman's films, including Brewster McCloud, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, 3 Women, Nashville, Thieves Like Us, and Welcome to L.A. R.I.P. Shelley Duvall. Great in 3 Women, great in The Shining. Great in everything I've seen her in, to be honest. She's a good actress and did not have an easy go at a lot of things, so I'm sorry for that. She's a good person. She seemed like it, at least. Stephen Hyde, another great review. Great job. Thank you. Nick Moore from Belgium. To serve man was certain made tangible in The Cook, The Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover. It's more disturbing than the Hannibal Lecter franchise in a way, even though the film is more theatrical. This film is begging for a collector's edition. Also, this movie apparently inspired parts of Ari Aster's Midsommar. I bet it did. The Killing Hour seems like a real thrill ride. I miss those grimy, sleazy thrillers sometimes. Questions. What's your favorite Animals Attack movie? Alligator. Which of these gialli did you enjoy more? The Case of the Bloody Iris or 7 Bloodstained Orchids? I don't know if I've seen Bloodstained Orchids, to be honest. I don't think I did. I know it's a Lenzi, but I've not watched that. One of the only Lenzi horror gialli I haven't seen. Are you never worried? Are you never worried when your cats looks at you and starts licking their beards with that twinkle in their eyes? No, I'm not worried. The only time I've been worried about my cats is when I thought they were sick or unhealthy. Till next time, God willing, I'm stoked to check out your latest Horror in 1992 episode. Thank you. It is Extra with Rob Yabaz, the director of The Sadness. So we had a lot of fun. Charlie Jick, Top Line is a fun watch. This is probably my favorite Cauldron release. By the way, have you seen the 80s slasher Fatal Pulse? Lots of nudity and someone is killed with a vinyl record. There should be a proper release of it. I think I have a bootleg, but I don't think I ever watched Fatal Pulse. I'll definitely get to it. David Leather, I watch every movie through your show. Thank you. He also says 2 Zs and a knot. And then, dude, why do youngsters Z like you talk so freaking fast? Slow down. I'm almost 70. Fata Morgana, watch till you got it. Comics rule. Longtime watchers, be back in 2 and 2. I don't know. I've always been a very fast talker. I'd rather talk fast than too slow. I have ADHD. My mind works very fast. Sometimes that's why I'll have like mistakes here and there. And I'll go back and re-listen, and I'm like, shit, I made a mistake there. And speaking of mistakes, there's 2. When I was talking about Killing Hour, I said the director also did He Knows You're Alone, or Alone in the House. Are You Alone in the House? It's He Knows You're Alone. Got my slashers mixed up. The other one's a TV movie. And also I mentioned that the guy who was in Ratman was in Four Flies on Grey Velvet. Nah, he's in Cat O' Nine Tails. And I was re-listening. I was like, those aren't right. That's not right. This isn't right. But yeah, I don't know. I appreciate you watching and everything like that. And that's fine. You can dog on me a little bit. As you said, you're 7, and I've been dogging on old people a lot lately. So we'll call it even. Yeah, but I just talk fast. I've always talked fast. And I'm probably not going to change, Maybe my pronunciation, I'll try to get it better, but I'm sure it'll just get worse. Rob Yabaz, Kanako, thank you. Yeah, great movie. Ilk Vomit, Beer Me, Moods. Bro, he's not talking fast at all. I think you're listening too slow. Thanks, Moods. Thanks for having my back. Gotta love Moods, 616. So let's get into this update. It's going to be very quick, so I'm not going to do the whole, video quality change thing. So first up, Heavy Metal was on sale. I should have watched this for 81 as a horror Jason picture. Love Heavy Metal. It's been years. Anthology, animated, good shit. And then I picked up I'm getting 83, so I was like, I don't have this on 4K. I picked up Videodrome. Now I have the Criterion American Blu-ray, so I was like, I'm just going to grab the 4K from Arrow because it probably has different features. Might as well have the best of both worlds. David Cronenberg classic. Videodrome is awesome. And I also picked up from Third Window Films Electric Dragon 80,000. And I had this DVD, never watched it. I like Third Window Films. They put out a lot of crazy Japanese stuff. It's just unfortunate I can't import it all the time. But yeah, that is the update. Let's get out of here. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one.